Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast.
Welcome back to Right on Four Corners. I'm your host, DelSheree Gladden. I'm a writer and an editor, and on this week's episode, I have Ricardo. He's going to be talking about his new book that's coming out through Artemisia Press. Ricardo, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ricardo Victoria. I'm from Toluca, Mexico. Aside teaching sustainable design, I'm a writer of fantasy, science fiction, and occasionally horror stories. I have published 3 series called Tempest Made, published by Artemisia Publishing in publishing house in Albuquerque, Nuevo Mexico.
So how did you get connected with Artemisia Publishing?
Through a mutual friend. When I wrote my first novel, I was querying for publishers, agents, and I was getting a little bit frustrated. And I'm in a science fiction writers group in Facebook, and I was talking with the admin of the group, friend, and I was telling her about my recent moves about getting the book to the eyes of a publisher, and she mentioned Joe Habiger, who is the head honcho of Artemisia Publishing, and she gave me contact details for me to contact him. I sent him an email, query, and everything, and we started to work. From there on, luckily he was interested in the book, and the rest is history. We are now in book 3, soon to be 4.
Nice. So there'll be an additional one after Tempest Blades.
Yeah.
So this one is The Magic of Chaos.
Yeah, originally the series was planned for 3 books, but I realized that I couldn't finish the story at an additional 4th. It's already in the hands of the publisher. As far as my side is complete.
Good. Well, that's nice to be at the end and be able to relax a little bit.
I'm trying to rest because last year I tried to do something dumb, the 4 of them, but I'm exhausted. 2 of them were for work, for the fantasy series. I'm exhausted. I'm taking a small break.
It sounds like you need it. So tell our listeners, what is your day job?
My day job, most of my day job is spent teaching classes. I teach the School of Architecture and Design of the Autonomous University of the State of Mexico. So I teach most of the subjects regarding sustainability, sustainable design, and bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degrees. Most of the time I'm teaching or doing research, sustainable design, which I try to merge with some of my hobbies. So I have an excuse to follow my hobbies well, also doing research that helps somewhat to contribute to. That's most of my day job.
That's a lot. Yeah, well, I'm glad you managed to fit in some time for writing, and to be able to write in a sci-fi and fantasy. It's probably a nice break from the more academic side of your life.
Yeah, because I have to write a lot for my academic job, for my day job, because I have to write papers. So I'm pretty much all the time writing. Get him at home and a bit of them with my wife, and then go back to writing, but now the fantasy and the science fiction stuff. Or sometimes I wake really early in the morning to write. My best friend is the notes app in my phone, because that's where I write most of the ideas and the dialogues, and then I edit everything in Word.
Before we dive into questions about the story, give listeners a little bit of an overview of what the series is about.
The series is mostly about a group of heroes that found themselves to be the heroes. Choose their life, life choose them. The series, they face a series of challenges, both trying to save the world, but also the kind of personal challenges that you get from a lot in life. So we have a main character who is named Fionn, who is a retired hero, retired soldier that has to now teach this new generation how to survive and how to use their abilities, their special abilities to do what they do. save the world. He's undergoing a lot of post-traumatic stuff. He has PTSD, anyone that has been in combat. So for those, most of the books he's dealing with that and trying to get a second chance to rebuild his life. You have Gabby, who is a singer she mostly has to choose between she wants to be a singer or a hero and has to find a balance between those two, and also her little bit of dark past because when she was a kid she was trained as an assassin and she doesn't want to do that, so trying to leave that behind. And you have Alex with the other main character. That is best friend and becomes this rebellious student of Sion, and he's rebellious because from chronic depression, so he's just struggling with his mental health, but at the same time trying to do the right thing. And then you have the other members of the group who all of them have their own struggles, who want to read, they're trying to understand their sexual orientation or reconcile with their past, or trying to redeem themselves. And they find themselves put together and circumstances that face them with monsters, demons, fallen gods. There is a lot of magic mixed with technology. There is an airship, which pretty much a character of its own. And the main characters, which is the name of the story, the series Tempest Blade, are sentient swords, the titular Tempest Blade. And some of the characters of the core group have a few of them. Not everyone has them or can use them because they choose their owners. So in these 4 books, well, currently 3, the Mega Submarine.
It's a good overview. Thank you. So you really bring a lot of different elements into this series with both some of the advanced technology, and there's also the magical abilities. Tell me how you approached developing your world for this series.
When I started, I put myself the rule everything goes as long as I can make it have sense within the world. So if I want to introduce a particular element like, internet, I can make it have sense to have internet in this world where magic is available. It doesn't work like internet, but works using magic as the signal to transmit only the main characters have a flying airship. It's because the planet is atmosphere it's too dangerous to allow anything bigger than a blimp to fly across the sky. Otherwise, because I grew up watching a lot of Saturday morning cartoons, Ninja Turtles, Thundercats, Silverhawks, and a lot of anime from Japan. And in those cartoons, the rules are, but it's important to tell the story. The rest is just props. If I have a team and I have something I want to say, I can start to incorporate all these different elements within the story. And I never start writing the book with the first chapter or in chronological order. I always write the final chapter, the ending. Then I write more index of the chapters, and I write them as soon as I have ideas for them. It's a little bit messy in a way, but knowing how the story is going to end allows me to work backwards. What I need to introduce, in which order, what elements I have to add, how I need the characters to act in the beginning so I can have them in this position at the end.
That's a really interesting process. I haven't come across someone who works in that manner yet, but it seems to have worked really well for you.
When I started writing, I tried to write in chronological order the books, and I never made any progress in a few pages because I get distracted too easy. I write the chapters as inspiration and the ideas strike me.
Yeah, I think finding the writing process that works for you is a very individual pursuit, and everybody's is a little bit different. And I think that's really cool that you were willing to kind of break things up and just see if you could make something non-chronological work for you and just go with whatever section was calling to you most in that moment.
It also helps that I'm trying to use something I have to teach at school, which is something called system thinking, which is about relationships within a system and how to study. It's just to study ecosystem and a lot of biology and natural stuff. So I'm applying that to writing so I can keep track of all the things I'm adding and subtracting, and I still need to write to finish a story.
I'm glad that worked for you, and I think that could be helpful for other people who maybe are struggling with sitting down and writing it in the usual manner if that's not working for them, to try something different and see what's going to appeal to them most.
Hopefully.
So were there elements, you said you kind of just brought in different things, and if you could make it make sense, you would keep it. Were there any world or story elements that couldn't make sense of and had to discard?
I tend to leave outside the books a lot of backstory. I could say I have a massive Bible of the world, of the setting, and I can show only glimpses in the books because I cannot fit everything. It's not a history book or a world atlas. The thing I'm trying to, or I have found myself living aside a bit, is things like economic system. Not because I don't want to add them, it's because I'm not that good to explain them in that regard. I cannot fit it in the story. It's not going to add anything to the plot. Let's say that a wizard did it and move on.
Well, that's a really good point. I think when you really start delving into building a fantasy or sci-fi world, something non-modern and normal, you can really go off into a lot of areas and come up with lots of great ideas, but sometimes it's not all going to fit into the story. You have to set some of that aside, and I like the point you made that if it wasn't moving the story forward, if it wasn't serving a purpose, then that's where you kind of left those just to the ideas and didn't spend a lot of time trying to integrate it into the story.
I will have a lot of stuff like a more detailed economic system or giant robots, stuff like that, but I couldn't make it work. So I have to play to my strengths. I think that's something every writer has to do, play to their strengths. Some are really good with characters, some are really good with plots, some are really good with world building. So I would say play to your strengths so you can tell the story you want to. Make this particular detail. Finish the story, then find a way to make everything work.
I think especially for newer writers. Yeah, especially for some of those who are maybe trying to finish their first project and getting hung up on some of those things, that trying to finesse it just right or combine elements, and it can really halt your progress when you get stuck on the details like that. And I think that's good advice to keep writing, get it done, and then maybe come back to that later. And if you still can't make it work, maybe you don't need it.
When she doesn't have an idea for a particular name or scale, just leave in brackets. Insert something here later, come back later here, and keep moving. And I thought that's a really good advice, because you get hung up with those details and progress, and then you get frustrated and becomes a vicious cycle. I think the good way, at least what I do, is I need a name for the monster of the book, and I don't have an idea. I just a lot of excess in red and say, come back here later when you have a better idea. So I finish the story, and then I make do a little bit of research, mythological names in different countries and cultures, and say, okay, this one might fit the story, but I need to change a little bit the spelling because it doesn't make sense. Or maybe I go to the movie and see something in the movie and say, oh, this sounds like a good inspiration to solve this particular plot detail I was struggling, and then I go back to where I put the continue here later and work that part. But by then I have most of the story already done, which takes a lot of pressure from the process.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it really gives you a chance to just keep working and get down what you do have. And, as long as it's not like a major story element that you can't move forward from, I think that's a nice approach to just freeing yourself from some of the nitty-gritty parts of a story and just getting it done. Because you learn a lot from just finishing a project, even if it's not exactly at the level you want on that first draft, which I think it never really is. There's always work to be done later.
Yeah, it took me a lot of time to learn and accept that the first draft is just, as Neil Gaiman said, telling yourself the story. Writing in that way is not lonely endeavor. At least I'm lucky that my editor, we have a good communication and I can bounce ideas. We have this good rapport when it comes to the edit, so I know that I have my first draft, and I go build myself for a second one or a third one when I need. Then when I send him the draft, I know he's going to see a lot of blind spots I didn't notice the first time. And I'm going to send them back with a useful note to tell me, oh, you could do this, or this doesn't check with what you said in the previous book. Also, I have a friend from high school. She's also an aspiring author. She's my beta reader, so once I finish the first draft, I send her that draft to her, because she keeps better track of my own continuity than my thought, because my memory is not that good. she sent me a lot of notes from reader's point of view, and that's what I do to polish the draft before sending it to the editor. So once the idea is on paper, the rest is polishing until it's good enough to be published. Perfect notebook is going to be, you can pick any book in any bookstore and you're going to find a typo or a mistake. So instead of stressing about that, I'm just trying to tell the best story I can tell and then polish it enough so it can be an enjoyable experience for the reader.
Absolutely. I think that's important to keep in mind, that you're writing a story for a reader, for them to enjoy the world and the characters that you've created. And I think those little tiny things, that striving for perfection, can be something that holds people up when they're writing. Just that fear of it not being everything completely perfect, just getting through it and then working through that process of beta readers and editors. Those are both really good stages to learn a lot about your writing and about editing, but also just what different people are getting out of the story. I think that really helps a lot.
Yeah, and also in my case, I have to work with my second language. My native language is Spanish, but I'm writing directly in English. I'm not translating I write directly in English. So obviously there are some phrases or some colloquialism I might not be entirely familiar. I have to do also research on how to write things in English, say things in Spanish. Focus on writing in English, that I start to mix in channels or frequencies, and we start to use, I forget how to say this in Spanish. I know how to say it in English because I don't know how to say it in Spanish. And my wife has to know it because it's an extra challenge. I'm not writing in my native language, I'm writing in my second language. A different kind of challenge. That's also taught me to always strive to write the best book ever possible, but don't frustrate yourself if you cannot be perfect, because you are already trying to solve this extra challenge you already have, which is sometimes the language barrier or some nuisance of the languages.
So what made you decide to write the series in English versus Spanish?
Because there is not much market of science fiction and fantasy literature in Mexico. Sadly, the market is small, not because of the readers, but because of the publishing options. Most of the publishers here tend to buy the translation rights from books from the US, from the UK. The big publishers here are from Spain. So we have a similar problem to the US in their Big Five. We have also Big Five, which ironically are the same, like Penguin House. Some of the contracts from these big publishers are very draconian to the authors in terms of copyright. And the rest of the publishers are vanity presses, predatory presses that charge you a lot of money to give you 20 copies of your book. It always goes to the author because it's the creator of the IP, not from the author to the publisher. So after doing a lot of research or the situation, we say, okay, you have the advantage. You studied for a time in England, so you are already used to write in English. So go ahead and try to read in English. But I start with a book to practice. Like when you start going to the gym or practicing any sport, you start doing the basics, simple, short things until you start getting used to how to do things, and then you tackle a bigger project. And that's what I did. I wrote a few short stories with a couple of friends I met in England. We created a small indie press focused on publishing short story anthologies, fiction, fantasy, horror. It's called Inklings Press. We only publish anthologies for short. And the original idea was to practice and get those stories out. And then when we saw that, we can get nominated to awards because of stories, we got a friend, one of our stories got nominated to a Sidewise Award 2016, Star Prize for Alternate History, and the story was about space traveling dinosaurs, which I co-authored with another author called Brenda Harry, friend of mine. We see that, okay, if we can get nominations, I think we are ready to start tackling bigger projects, so each one of us started to write. That's how I get the first Tempest book, with everything. And then, as I said, that's how I met Jeff from Artemisia Publishing, from a common friend. in this group and the story. But I decided to do that after doing a lot of research because there is there are not many options here in Mexico, which is a shame. You don't make a living from writing in Mexico. That's for sure.
It's good to know. Yeah, I didn't realize that Mexico didn't have as much of a sci-fi fantasy type market there. So that's something for younger writers to consider if they are dual language, to put in that research and see what language is going to work best for the genre that they're in.
Yeah, because fantasy books writing in Spanish are magical realism, stuff like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, but fantasy, as we know, Lord of the Rings, The Wheel of Time, A Song of Paradise, or science fiction in the venue of the Three-Body Problem, Jurassic Park. It's very rare thing here, and most of the Mexican authors that write them in the U.S. or in Canada. For example, you have Silvia Moreno Garcia, who is a Mexican author. She lives in Canada, and she was nominated for a Hugo, personally. I think she's the first Mexican author to be nominated for a Hugo, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
All her books are written and published in English, even if some of them take place in Mexico.
That's interesting. Well, that's good to know about that. And I think that can help some young authors starting out kind of focus their efforts. And I did want to ask, with this book being the third book, Tempest Blades, The Magic of Chaos, and you said you already have the fourth book written, which part of the series was the most challenging for you? For me, it's always the last book. I always have a hard time wrapping up a series. Causes a lot of anxiety for me. How did you find the process of getting through the entire series?
Well, I wrote the very first book, thinking, okay, this is my one shot. I'm never going to get another shot, so I'm going to write it as a self-contained book. If you read the first book, you get an ending that works like, okay, the story can end here, and that's all. You don't need another book. Well, I left myself out with some hints and cues and notes that, I could expand on this on the following book. So the second book, I said, okay, I'm going to write it, but I'm going to change the perspective. The first book is mostly told from the perspective of Jan, the other character, and I'm going to change it to Alex, and then it's going to more or less be self-contained. I'm going to say more or less because obviously there are more hints to a bigger world and a bigger threat and a big bad evil guy at the end of the story. And I focused in the adventure, mostly in the personal struggles of the character with his depression and how that was a parallel of what was happening with the real world, with the world. And then it came the third book, which was by far the hardest one to write because I wrote it from two different point of views, two characters, Gabby and Sam, and those are feminine characters, so I had to ask a lot of help from my wife to check that, okay, I'm being respectful with the characters because there are things that, I'm a male author trying to write female characters, so I'm trying to do justice and write it adequately and being respectful and don't fall in the classic cliches that many other male authors. Also, I had to ask a lot of help from my wife, from my reader to check that, okay, the dialogues are okay, the descriptions are fine, and I was trying to also to have two different plots running parallel that kind of merge at the end. Kind of because it's not, they don't unite completely, they just affect each other at points to avoid the necessity the need to write additional book. So it came a point where I just really want to be done with this chapter. I can't anymore with this one. So to solve that, I took a very weird approach. I planned every chapter as if they were the tracks of a musical album written by one of the characters. I made a playlist, different songs I found on YouTube, tried to match them and write them as I was listening to them. So as Easter egg for the readers, the book has the cover of the album, the track list, and that track list are the chapter titles. Each song in the book has an equivalent in the real world, more or less. and that helped me to manage to finish the book. So when I reached the fourth one, it was easier because the fourth one, I didn't need to introduce anything of the world and anything more. It was just closing acts, saying loose ends, and finishing the story. So it was faster to write because I didn't have to do all the legwork I had to do in the previous one, to do all the world building and cultures and mythology and writing poems and writing lyrics for songs, because I had to learn how to write lyrics for the third one. That was it. The second one is the second one, of course, Titans, is the most personal one because it talks about depression, which is something I suffered from since high school. And the third one is was the most challenging one because I tried to tackle a lot of stuff, music, to plot, female characters. One of the characters is also a member of the LGBTQ community, so I had to research about that. Another character has hearing aid, so has a hearing disability, so I had to research about that. It was a messy project that I tried to do in 6 months, because more or less it takes me 6 months to write a book, 6 months to research, 6 months to write, and then 6 months to edit. And when I finished the third one, I started writing the fourth and last one right away, so I didn't lose momentum, and that's why the So yeah, the third one was quite a challenge because it had so many moving parts that I had to make fit and work together. So when I sent the book to their arcs to a couple of reviewers, I was really nervous because I was telling them, okay, this is going to be a disaster, because who are you to write the experience of these characters who are not your gender or don't have your sexual orientation or have this different experience? I was really, really nervous. In the first review, I said, this is the best book of the series. I said, how am I going to complete again?
That is always nice to hear that. Okay, well,
I didn't expect that review, and I was, okay, I can read it, because this reviewer is very, it's polite, it's kind, but it's also very demanding with what they like or not. I saw the review published that this is the best book of the series. It was like, okay, I can take it. I can wait.
Good. Well, it sounds like the process, the research, everything you put into it, it really paid off. And we are out of time, but I did want to remind listeners that the book is called Tempest Blades, The Magic of Chaos, and it's by Ricardo Victoria, and it's available through Artemisia Press and online through most ebook retailers and book retailers that I saw. So out there and ready to be purchased.
Yeah, both in ebook and physical form.
And where can people find you online to stay up to date on when the fourth book will come out and your other projects?
I have a website /blog, which I need to update, which is RicardoVictoriaU.com. The U is because my second last name is Uribe, so I have two last names in Mexico. Yeah. I also spend a lot of time on Twitter, which my handle is winged_Leo.
Okay.
And also have a Facebook page with my name, Ricardo Victoria. So they can find me mostly there. And also have an Instagram account that I'm starting to date, but that's more focused on photography than writing, but I'm planning to merge both aspects together.
Great. All right. Well, Ricardo, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today about your book, and I'll keep an eye out for book 4, and we'll probably chat again at that point.
Yeah, thank you for the space and the time.
Yeah.
And for the invitation to your show.
Well, happy to have you.
Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.